I had spent months preparing for this moment. The regional art exhibition was a big deal. One of those events where every eye in the industry was on you, where artists, collectors, and gallery owners mingled, and where reputation could be made or broken in a single night. And tonight, it was my turn. My name was called. I stood there, a little shaky, but full of pride. I'd poured my heart into this gallery for the past 10 years, and now, it felt like everything was about to pay off. The award was in my hand. The applause was echoing in my ears. It was a moment that should have felt like the pinnacle of my career. But it didn't. I glanced over at Lucas, my husband of 10 years, sitting at the table next to me. He had been there with me through the highs and lows. Or so I thought. I expected a smile, maybe a wave. But what I got was far from that. His lips were pressed tight, his face betraying nothing but coldness. Then, as if to make sure no one else could hear, he leaned over to me and whispered, "I'm leaving with Victor for the weekend. Romantic getaway. You'll be fine." I froze for a second, my breath catching in my throat. Victor, my trusted co-owner, my partner, the one I had worked side by side with for years. And Lucas, my husband, the one I had loved, the one I thought understood the importance of this moment. They were going away? Together? My mind raced, but I managed to keep my composure as I walked up to the stage. I took the microphone, the award still clutched tightly in my hand. The audience was still applauding, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. I forced a smile, my voice steady despite the sick feeling crawling up my throat. Thank you all so much for this recognition. I'm incredibly grateful for the support of my team, and of course, my husband, Lucas, who has always been there. I stopped myself before I could say more. No, not tonight. Not after that whisper. He didn't deserve my words. I cleared my throat, feeling the weight of his betrayal, the weight of the eyes on me. I finished the speech quickly, omitting Lucas's name from the list of those I thanked. It was deliberate, and I could feel the eyes on me as I walked off the stage. I could hear Lucas's mocking voice from across the room, loud enough for a few people around him to hear. "Guess she'll talk to me Monday, if she still cares by then." The laughter that followed cut into me like a knife. I could feel the heat in my cheeks as I forced my legs to carry me back to the table. But all I could see was Victor's wife, Clara, sitting across the room, her face a mixture of shock and sadness. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I couldn't look at her. "Not yet. Are you okay?" Victor asked me later, his voice a little too casual as he brushed past me with a smirk. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out, to throw everything I had at him. But I kept my head high, my back straight. There was no way I was going to let this night define me. Not yet. Not in front of all these people. But I couldn't shake the cold, gnawing feeling in my stomach. The evening of recognition, the moment that should have been mine to bask in, had turned into a nightmare. And the truth was, the worst part was yet to come. After the ceremony, the hum of conversation filled the air, but to me, it was all just background noise. The applause for my award was still ringing in my ears, but it felt hollow now, like a cruel joke. I caught a glimpse of Lucas, the man who'd promised to stand by me for life, whispering something to Victor. Their laughter floated through the crowd, but when their eyes met mine, I couldn't ignore the smug look they shared. A look that said everything I needed to know. Lucas and Victor were already making their way to the door, side by side, like they had planned their exit. They didn't even glance in my direction. It was as if the last 10 years of our marriage had been a lie. I felt sick to my stomach, but I kept walking, maintaining the facade. It wasn't the first time my world had been turned upside down, but this time, it was different. This time, I wouldn't be the one to break. As I passed by Clara's table, I saw her stiffen. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, she looked like she was about to say something. Instead, she just shook her head, her face pale. It was like she knew, but the words were stuck in her throat. She didn't deserve to be caught up in this, and I wasn't about to make her the enemy. But the realization hit me. Both Lucas and Victor had betrayed me, and both would be cut from my life, one way or another. Clara caught my gaze one last time before I turned away. She hesitated for a moment, then stood up and walked toward me. Her voice was low, barely audible over the noise of the crowd. "I'm sorry, Marissa," she said, her face flushed. "I knew. I was going to leave him, but I didn't know how to tell you." I didn't respond right away. Her confession hit me hard, but I had no room for sympathy now. This was bigger than her. It's not your fault, Clara, I said, my voice steady, but I could feel the tightness in my chest. I'm cutting both of them out. Out of my life, out of the business. And I suggest you do the same. Clara seemed to flinch at my words, but she nodded slowly. I'm done, she said, her voice shaking. I've already contacted a lawyer. I gave her a small nod before turning away. There was nothing more to say to her. My mind was already elsewhere, running through the steps I needed to take to reclaim control of my life and my gallery. They had humiliated me publicly, but I wouldn't let that define me. As I stepped into the cold night air, the sharpness of reality began to settle in. The drive home felt like it took hours, even though it was just a few minutes from the venue. I couldn't stop thinking about how I had spent years building the gallery alongside Victor. I had trusted him, leaned on him, and now I could feel that trust crumbling beneath me. The thought of him smiling, as if nothing had changed, sent a fresh wave of fury through me. And Lucas, he had once been my greatest supporter, my partner in everything. How could I have been so blind? I had spent so many years believing that love was enough. But now, I realized that love wasn't the problem. Trust was, and that had been shattered. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future. No more. I would erase them from my life, both personally and professionally, and I would make sure that neither of them could hurt me or my business again. The car sped along the streets, but my thoughts were already racing ahead. The divorce would be messy, but necessary. The partnership with Victor? That would end with the same finality. I was going to fight for what was mine, not out of revenge, but out of strength. It was time to stop letting these people control me, to stop letting their mistakes define who I was. I would come out of this stronger, no matter what it took. Later that evening, as the weight of the day began to settle in, I knew I couldn't just let things fester. Hope you're having fun with your little award ceremony. I know I am. Victor and I? Yeah, we're having a hell of a time. The weekend's been unforgettable. I can't believe you're still holding on to that dead marriage. But hey, guess I'll talk to you Monday if you still care by then. The mocking tone, the smugness. My blood boiled. Well, that's just perfect, I muttered under my breath. Without a second thought, I forwarded the message to Derek. This is more than enough. Use it. Understood. I'll get started right away. You should have those papers soon. I'll keep you updated. As the call ended, I sank back into the couch, my mind racing. I had the ammunition now. I was going to take both of them down. Lucas for what he had done to me and Victor for his betrayal of both my business and trust. This was no longer about being hurt. This was about reclaiming my power, my future. I glanced at the photo of the gallery hanging on the wall. I had poured my soul into that place, every inch of it built with sweat, blood, and sleepless nights. I wasn't going to let them take it from me. Not now. Not ever. The weekend had barely started, and already, I had begun the painful task of cleaning up the wreckage left by Lucas and Victor. I couldn't afford to wait. I couldn't afford to let the shock of it all paralyze me. If I wanted to reclaim my life, my business, I had to act swiftly. Lucas had left for his romantic weekend. With Victor, both of them smugly confident that I would just sit back and take it. I wasn't going to make that mistake. No, I was done being the woman who was always there to pick up the pieces after they fell apart. This time, I would be the one to take control. The townhouse was eerily quiet as I stood in the living room, surveying the space. It was supposed to be our home, the place where we'd built our life together. But now it felt hollow, a monument to lies and betrayal. With a sigh, I began gathering Lucas's things. I had no intention of letting him drag this out any longer. The bedroom was the worst. I picked up the clothes he had left scattered on the floor, the shirts that still smelled like him. But in the back of my mind, I could only think of the smell of his lies. Everything I touched felt tainted. I emptied drawers, placing his belongings into storage boxes. His shaving kit, his shoes, the books he'd never read but always claimed he would. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want his presence lingering around me, a constant reminder of the man who had betrayed me for someone I had trusted. As I worked, my phone buzzed. I paused and looked at the screen, a new message from Lucas. You sure you want to go through with this? It's not too late to come with us for the weekend. I'll make it up to you. I swear, you'll get over this. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped my lips. He really thought I'd drop everything to join them, just to pretend like none of this had happened. Like I was still the same woman he could control. I deleted the message. That was the last time I would ever respond to his manipulations. I moved to the living room, where I could still feel his presence in the furniture, in the photographs that once captured the happiest moments of our life. They were everywhere, pictures of us on vacations, at holidays, laughing. But now, they felt like lies themselves. I started taking them down, one by one, erasing every trace of him from the walls. As I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was reclaiming my space, my life. I grabbed the photo albums, too. The ones that chronicled our journey together. The pages were filled with memories that felt like someone else's life. The woman in those pictures was a fool, blind to the truth. I threw them in a box along with his things, sealed them up, and pushed them to the back of the closet. The final step was changing the locks. I wasn't about to let him come back, to walk in as if nothing had happened, as if he still had any claim on me. I wasn't just getting rid of Lucas. I was getting rid of the power he'd held over me for far too long. I was about to sit down when another message from him came through. This time, it wasn't a plea. It was a taunt. "You're just jealous, Marissa. He's everything you never were. Get over it." I didn't even flinch. Instead, I hit forward and sent the message to Derek. "I need this for the divorce," I typed, before setting the phone down. His words didn't hurt me anymore. They just made me angry. Angry that I had let him control me for so long. Angry that he thought he could talk to me like that, after everything I'd done for him. After everything I'd done for us. I left the townhouse for a while, needing air. But when I came back, I wasn't alone. Clara was standing on my doorstep. "Clara?" I asked, surprised to see her. She didn't look like herself. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes tired and red. She had been crying. "Marissa," she said, her voice soft, broken. "I know you're hurt, but I need you to know I had no idea. I didn't know about this weekend. I didn't know about them." Her hands trembled as she spoke. I motioned for her to come inside, my anger momentarily muted by the vulnerability in her voice. "What are you going to do?" I asked her, my voice steady. She looked down at the floor, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "I'm filing for divorce. I should have left him a long time ago, but you never know what's real anymore. You know?" I nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. "I'm cutting both of them out of my life," I said, my voice sharp. "Out of my marriage. Out of the gallery." "I understand," Clara said quietly. "But what about the gallery? Victor's always been a part of it. You built it together. And I'll rebuild it without him," I replied firmly. "I won't let them ruin everything I've worked for." Clara's face softened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I hope you know that." I met her gaze, feeling a sense of finality in that moment. "I know," I whispered, "and I won't let them control me anymore." Monday evening arrived, and the weight of the past few days settled heavily in my chest. It had been an exhausting weekend of erasing Lucas from my life, literally and figuratively. His belongings were packed away in boxes, his presence wiped from the walls of our townhouse. There was no turning back now. I wasn't prepared for what came next, but in some ways, I had known this confrontation would come. I just didn't know how bad it would feel. I heard Lucas's car pull into the driveway, the engine dying with a finality that made my stomach churn. He had no idea what awaited him. I stood at the front door, waiting. The moment the door opened, I saw him, cocky as always, as if nothing had changed. His smile faltered when he saw the locked door, the empty space around him, the absence of everything he'd left behind. "Marissa?" His voice was cautious, confused. "What's going on?" I didn't hesitate. "The locks have been changed. Everything you own is in your car." His face shifted from confusion to anger in an instant. "What the hell do you think you're doing? I'm cutting you out of my life, Lucas. Permanently." He took a step forward, his eyes searching mine as if expecting me to break. "Don't do this. We can fix this, Marissa." I was angry. No. I shook my head. "It's over. I'm done." I saw the flicker of realization in his eyes. He knew I wasn't playing around. The smug arrogance that had always been a part of him began to crumble. He took another step toward me, this time his voice pleading. Please, let's just talk about this. I'll fix it. I'll make things right." I couldn't even look at him anymore. His words were meaningless. The man I had loved, the one who'd stood beside me in everything, was gone. The man standing before me now was a stranger who had no place in my life. "Lucas," I said, my voice cold. "There's nothing left to say. What you did was unforgivable. You're not coming back." For a moment, there was silence between us, his eyes searching mine desperately. But then, I dropped the bombshell. The final piece of the puzzle. Victor is HIV positive, I said, my voice firm but steady. Clara gave me the test results. Lucas froze, his face drained of color. I saw the wheels turning in his head, the realization sinking in. The gravity of what he had done, what he had risked, finally hit him. His mouth moved, but no words came out. "What do you want me to say?" he finally whispered, his voice shaking. "I didn't know. You knew enough to risk everything," I replied sharply. "But don't worry. You won't be dealing with me anymore." I pulled out the divorce papers from the envelope in my hand. "These are already in motion. I'll have them served at your office. Don't bother fighting it." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He was stunned, completely unprepared for the finality of it all. And frankly, I wasn't feeling any sympathy. He had made his choice, and now it was time for him to deal with the consequences. "Go," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "I don't want to see you again." I turned my back on him then, heading inside. As I did, I heard the sound of him muttering something under his breath. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an attempt to change my mind. It was a man realizing he'd just lost everything. And I wasn't about to let him back in. The door slammed behind him, the sound sharp in the quiet of the house. For the first time in a long time, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Lucas was gone. And with him, so were the years of doubt, betrayal, and endless emotional exhaustion. It was over. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of finality in my gut. The house felt different, quieter, emptier, but it wasn't the kind of silence that leaves you lonely. It was the kind of silence that follows a storm when you're standing among the wreckage, knowing you've made it through to the other side. The first step in reclaiming my life had already been taken, and now it was time to finish what I started. I arrived at the gallery with purpose. My footsteps echoed in the empty space. The soft hum of the lights above was the only sound. It was a Monday morning, and while most people were easing into the start of the week, I was about to make a move that would change everything. I'd arranged everything with security earlier that morning. Victor had no idea what was coming. The door opened, and I watched him swagger in with that same cocky grin, the one I had once trusted, the one I had once believed in. He barely glanced in my direction as he strolled past the front desk, but when he saw me standing by the office door, the grin faltered, and his eyes narrowed. "Marissa," he said, voice laced with a mix of smugness and condescension. "What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I wish that were the case," I said flatly, stepping forward to meet him. I could feel the weight of every moment I had spent in this gallery, building it with him. Every sacrifice, every late night. And now, I felt nothing but contempt. "Victor, I'm afraid your time here is up. You're fired." His eyes widened in disbelief, the words taking a moment to sink in. "What? You can't fire me. This is our gallery, remember? We're business partners. You don't have that kind of power." "Oh, I do," I said, stepping into the room and grabbing the partnership agreement from the desk, sliding it toward him. "You violated the moral misconduct clause, the one that gives me the right to expel you for actions harmful to the business's reputation." I gave him a tight smile. "I'd say this counts, wouldn't you?" Victor scoffed, clearly trying to maintain control. "You think this is going to hold up? You think the staff will back you up? I'll expose you for the hypocrite you really are." His tone was vicious now, venom dripping from each word. I raised an eyebrow. "You've made threats before. Funny enough, I recorded those," I said, pointing to the small recorder on my desk. I could see him freeze as realization set in. "Clara helped me with that," I continued, not missing a beat. "We knew you'd try something like this. Your threats, your attitude, they've been recorded, and now it's time for you to face the consequences." He took a step toward me, his hands clenched at his sides, but before he could make another move, the gallery's security team stepped forward, blocking his way. "Victor, I suggest you leave. Now," I said firmly, not moving an inch. His face twisted with a mix of anger and desperation. He tried to muster some last-ditch attempt at intimidation, but there was nothing left to threaten me with. Everything he'd built was falling apart, and he knew it. "Get out of here," I repeated, my voice unwavering. Victor stood there for a long moment, staring at me, then at the security team. His shoulders sagged in defeat, and with one final look at me, he turned and stormed out of the gallery, his footsteps echoing off the marble floors. As the door slammed shut behind him, I stood there for a moment, breathing deeply. It was done. I had taken control. I had exposed him, humiliated him in front of the staff, and severed all ties with the man who had betrayed me professionally. I walked out into the main area where my staff had gathered, watching the scene unfold from a distance. They were all silent, eyes wide, uncertain about what was happening. It was time to reassure them. I stood before them, my heart beating a little faster now, but not from fear. There was no room for fear anymore. Only resolve. Only strength. Victor is no longer a part of this gallery. From now on, it's mine. We will move forward together, stronger than before, I said, my voice steady and commanding. I could see the looks on their faces, relief, surprise, maybe even a little awe. They had been watching me, waiting to see what I would do, and now they knew. I wasn't just the boss. I was the force behind this gallery, and I would never let anyone undermine it again. Victor was gone, but I wasn't just letting go of him. I was letting go of everything he represented: betrayal, deceit, the uncertainty that had weighed me down for so long. I want you all to know this gallery will continue to thrive, and I'll be here to make sure of it. I continued, giving them a nod of reassurance. We move forward, and we make it bigger, better, stronger. This is our time now. As I turned away, the quiet buzz of energy in the room told me everything I needed to know. The gallery was mine, and I would never let personal betrayal interfere with my business again. The days after Lucas left were a blur of cold calculations and sharp decisions. I hadn't realized how deep the exhaustion ran until the moment he was gone, until the weight of the years he'd stolen from me had finally started to lift. But even as I stood on the threshold of reclaiming my life, the work wasn't done. It had just begun. It was the first Monday since everything went down. The divorce papers had been filed. The partnership with Victor was unraveling. I was now the sole owner of the gallery, and nothing, no one, was going to take it from me. As soon as I walked into my office, I saw the letter waiting for me. It was from Derek, my attorney, confirming that Lucas had been served. I sat down at my desk and stared at the document for a long moment, letting the words sink in. Lucas Salazar served divorce papers at his corporate office. The scandal had already begun to ripple through his office, I knew. His colleagues would be whispering about the drama, his shame laid bare in the cold light of day. But honestly, I didn't care. This was the end. A message came through my phone as I finished reading the papers. It was from Clara. Divorce papers filed. No turning back now. I closed my eyes for a brief second. Clara had taken the first step for herself too. She had done what I couldn't bring myself to do, and now she was free of Victor too. For both of us, this was liberation. Victor was a different story. He was still out there, though. The scandal was already catching up to him. He had been under investigation for knowingly exposing his partners to HIV. It was only a matter of time before the truth about him spread, and the legal consequences would follow. I had the satisfaction of knowing that the man who had plotted behind my back would face the consequences of his actions, just as Lucas would. Days later, a phone call came in. I didn't recognize the number, but as soon as I answered, I recognized the voice. It was Lucas. He sounded desperate. Marissa, I've been thinking. I'm sorry, okay? I was angry. I didn't mean it. You have to understand, everything just got out of control. Please, come on, we can fix this. I let him speak for a few moments, but his words, his apologies, they meant nothing now. Not after everything. I don't care, Lucas, I said quietly, but with finality. Our relationship died the moment you chose betrayal. I don't need your apologies. I don't need you anymore. The silence on the other end was thick, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of dragging this out. This was over. I've moved on. I continued, my voice unwavering. And you will too. I've already filed. You'll get the papers. They'll be waiting for you at your workplace. I ended the call without waiting for a response. I didn't need him to beg anymore. I didn't need his hollow pleas for forgiveness. He had made his choice, and now I was making mine. The weight of that call lifted something in me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing again. I could feel the walls I'd built around my heart cracking, the years of anger and hurt slowly dissipating. It was a strange feeling, freedom, and yet it didn't feel like an end. It felt like the beginning of something new. Lucas was gone. Victor was on his way out. And I had taken control of my life again. It had been a year since everything changed. A year since I stood in the ruins of my marriage, since I dismantled my partnership with Victor, since I took control of the gallery, and most importantly, took control of my life. In that time, the gallery had grown beyond anything I'd ever imagined. I'd expanded the space, added new artists, and had even gained regional acclaim. For the first time in years, I could breathe without constantly worrying about betrayal or manipulation. I stood in the front room of the gallery, admiring the space. The walls were covered in new pieces from up-and-coming artists, each one more breathtaking than the last. The scent of fresh paint and polish would fill the air, mixing with the quiet hum of a busy day. The gallery was mine, fully mine now, and it was thriving. "Marissa, you've got a visitor," my assistant, Sarah, called from the back office. I turned, expecting one of my regular clients or an artist dropping by to discuss new works. But when I walked toward the front desk, I froze. Standing there was Daniela, the young interior designer I had met a few months ago. She was wearing a black blouse and tailored jeans, her short hair slightly tousled, and she had that look of someone who had been through her own share of pain, but still managed to stand tall in the face of it. The last time I saw her, we'd had a brief conversation about her recent divorce, how she was rebuilding her life, piece by piece, just as I was. There was something about her calm strength that resonated with me. "Hey," I said, a smile tugging at my lips. "I didn't expect to see you here." She smiled back, a little shy, but her eyes were warm. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she said, glancing around the gallery. "No, not at all. Just admiring the space. It's been a good year for us." She raised an eyebrow, her gaze scanning the walls, the art, the people milling about. "It's more than good. It's incredible." She glanced at me again, and I could see the curiosity in her eyes. "How have you been? I mean, really, after everything?" It was an honest question, one that caught me off guard. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure how much I wanted to reveal. The truth was, I had come a long way. There were days when I still felt the sting of betrayal, the pain of it all. But the woman I had become was stronger, clearer, and most importantly, freer than I had ever been. "I've been better than I could have imagined," I said, meeting her eyes. "I don't think I could have built this life if I hadn't gone through the things I did. The betrayal, the heartbreak, it's all led me to something better." She smiled softly, nodding as if she understood. Sometimes, the hardest things lead us to the right path, even when we don't see it at the time. I chuckled. "That's exactly what I've learned. It took a while to get here, though." "Would you ever have imagined this when you were with him?" she asked, a subtle hint of sympathy in her voice. I shook my head, feeling a quiet resolve settle inside me. No, I was stuck, letting him control me, letting him define my future. But now I've realized I get to choose that. No one else. She paused, looking me over, a knowing expression in her eyes. "I think I understand that feeling. I'm still learning how to choose my own path, but I'm getting there. Slowly." We stood there in a comfortable silence, both of us processing the weight of our individual journeys. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. A connection. Something beyond just our shared experiences of pain. It was more than that. An understanding, a possibility. "I've been thinking," Daniela said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Maybe I could help with the next exhibition. I've always wanted to collaborate with an art space like this." I smiled, intrigued. "You're an interior designer. What exactly did you have in mind?" She leaned forward, her voice growing more animated as she spoke about her ideas for transforming the gallery's space. How we could create a more immersive experience for the visitors, blending the artwork with elements of design that could bring it to life in new ways. Her passion was evident, and it struck something in me. Maybe it was the way she spoke so openly, so confidently about a future she was building. Maybe it was the way I realized that, in her own way, she was also reconstructing her life from the rubble of her past. "Sounds like an amazing idea," I said, a spark of excitement growing inside me. "Let's make it happen." Over the next few weeks, we worked together, creating something truly unique. An exhibition that blended art with interior design, bringing together two forms of creativity that had never been fully explored in the gallery. It was exhilarating to collaborate with someone who shared my vision and drive. As we spent more time together, our professional bond deepened into something more. We had both been through painful divorces, and we took our time with each other, building trust slowly, carefully. Neither of us was rushing into anything. But what started as a mutual understanding soon turned into something deeper, a connection neither of us had expected. One evening, After a particularly successful event at the gallery, Daniela and I found ourselves sitting in a quiet corner, sipping wine and talking about everything and nothing. You know, I said, breaking the silence. I don't think I'd be where I am now if I hadn't gone through the mess with Lucas and Victor. I thought they were the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But now I realize they were the catalyst for everything that's led me here. She smiled, her eyes soft and understanding. I get it. I think I was meant to go through my pain to get to this moment too. I leaned forward, my heart pounding with a new kind of hope. I never would have imagined that something so good would come from all that bad. But I'm starting to feel like I've got a chance at something real now. She reached out, taking my hand in hers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a quiet optimism stir inside me. We both had our scars, our pasts, but we were healing. Together, perhaps. A year had passed since everything fell apart, since I found out the man I loved, the one I had spent a decade with, had betrayed me with someone I had trusted as a business partner. A year since I took control, not only of my life, but of the gallery I had spent years building. And here I stood, in the same space, but everything had changed. The gallery had flourished. What had once been a painful reminder of betrayal was now a thriving testament to my resilience. New artists had joined. The walls were filled with incredible work, and for the first time in my life, I felt at peace with where I was. I glanced around the gallery, taking in the sight of the polished floors, the crisp lines of the art hanging on the walls, and the soft murmur of a few visitors admiring the latest collection. This was mine. It had always been mine, even when I allowed others to take control. Now, it was truly in my hands, and I had built something beautiful from the wreckage of my past. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced down at the screen. It was a message from Daniela, the interior designer I had met months ago. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me as I read it. Dinner tonight? I promise no gallery talk this time. Just us. Let me know if you're free. I quickly typed a response. I'd love that. See you tonight. The last year had been a journey not just of rebuilding my career, but of rediscovering myself. Daniela and I had grown closer over time. We'd spent months learning to trust each other, taking things slow. She had her own scars, her own painful divorce, but through it all, we found a kindred spirit in each other. We connected over our shared understanding of pain, but more importantly, we learned how to build something new from it. A friendship that had blossomed into something deeper, more hopeful. I thought about how different my life was now. The betrayal I had experienced from Lucas and Victor had carved a path toward a future I never would have expected. Back then, I couldn't have imagined that my life would be this fulfilling, this rich with new possibilities. But here I was, about to go to dinner with someone who made me feel alive again. The past was still there, of course. The memories, the pain, it didn't just vanish. But it no longer defined me. I had let go of the toxic people in my life. And in doing so, I had created space for new connections, new joys, new dreams. I'd taken everything that had once broken me and turned it into strength. As I closed up the gallery that night, locking the door behind me, I felt a quiet sense of contentment. I had come so far. I thought of Clara, how she too had rebuilt her life, free from the man who had betrayed both of us. I'd reached out to her recently, and we'd made plans to meet for coffee. We had both suffered, but now we were both moving forward in our own ways, stronger and more independent than ever. As I headed out into the evening, the streets bathed in the soft glow of city lights, I felt a deep gratitude for how far I had come. I had been through the fire, but it had forged me into someone new. Someone who knew her worth, someone who had found her voice again. And when I looked to the future, I didn't see the same fear that once held me back. Instead, I saw endless possibilities, both in my business and in my personal life. I arrived at the restaurant, Daniela already waiting for me at the table, a small, welcoming smile on her face. She looked beautiful, her presence calming in a way I hadn't expected but had grown to cherish. As I sat down across from her, I realized something. I was no longer looking back at the past, not even at the shadows of betrayal. I was looking forward, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what came next. Ready for tonight? Daniela asked, her voice light, her eyes sparkling. I smiled, feeling the weight of the past dissolve even further. Absolutely. Let's make it a night to remember. And so we did. We talked about everything and nothing, enjoying the easy comfort of each other's company. The future was bright, and with it, I knew that I was ready for whatever came next, because this time, it was my choice, my path. As I walked home later, the cool night air brushing against my face, I thought of everything that had led me to this point. Betrayal, heartbreak, and loss had given way to growth, strength, and hope. I had found my way again, and I was grateful for it all. I quietly thanked the universe for steering me away from Lucas and Victor's chaos and leading me toward this new chapter. I felt a deep sense of peace. My future was brighter and stronger than ever, and for the first time, I knew, without a doubt, that I was ready for it.